Welcome back, Death Toll Racing. We're going to do a revival video of this 64 Ford F250 today. This is a 4x4 truck, factory 4x4, and then it has a lot of options in the interior and stuff. It's actually a pretty cool truck. It's been missing a lot of the nicer, the nicer components in the truck. Since I've known it, which has been my entire life. It has always been a work truck, and we've always kind of treated it as such. It's been farm fixed a lot, but for the most part, it's still a pretty original truck. So I'm going to pull this thing in the shop. We're going to see what it takes to get it going. It hasn't ran since about 2016. I was fighting actually just basic, simple stuff, but it was just becoming a hassle with the open vent carburetor on it and the ethanol fuel. We couldn't get non-ethanol fuel at that time. So we're going to pull this thing in, see what it takes to get it going. And for those of you unfamiliar with these trucks, that is the factory bed. The factory did put that bed on the truck. I call them the ugly bed, but they were reusing the previous body style bed, and they put them on the 4x4s and even some of the two-wheel drive trucks. And it was just a way of saving some money. Ford, the company, wasn't in the best of shape when they built this truck, but then came the Mustang. All right, 292 V8. This is the V8 between the flathead V8 and the V8s that we're more familiar with. Two barrel, single exhaust. The exhaust comes out of the driver's side into the passenger side and out. Basic, very basic engine. And it worked good. It's worked good for us forever, for years. Growing up, it worked. The problem with this thing lied as soon as you couldn't get non-ethanol fuel anymore. That's kind of what killed this thing. It was just basically battling carburetor issues due to the ethanol. There was not an additive in the world, or at least back then, that would keep ethanol from absorbing water. I don't think there is an additive that can keep that from happening. And the problem is with these carburetors, they vent, atmosphere vent, when they're not running, and, well, they corrode on the inside. And so the accelerator pump sticks, float valve stick, it's just one thing after the other every time you get in it. So we can get non-ethanol fuel now though, so that's cool. So I'm gonna get it running again, so that way I can drive it every once in a while and kind of use it, drive it up to the sawmill or something, and just have some good old times with it. So let's get going on it. It should be pretty easy. We're just gonna start air filter to pan, just kind of go through everything, change all the oil, change the oil in the air filter, the oil bath. I guarantee you that thing's full of bugs. And then hopefully get it started. We'll put a battery in it, and it should start right up. All right, so we'll service the air cleaner here in a bit. We are going to remove this carburetor, and we're actually going to replace it with a little bit newer version of the Autolite 2100. And you can buy the newer version brand new, not rebuilt. There are not very many of these carburetors left around because they mostly all kind of crapped out in the phase. That's the original engine tag. I just thought that was interesting. So it's kind of cool, 292 V8. So anyway, we're going to replace it with that newer version of the 2100 Autolite, and I will show you what it takes to swap these over. There's quite a few things you got to kind of do to make it work, and I'm sure there's other ways of doing it as well. But I wanted to leave the truck as original as possible and just modify the carburetor. So I'm going to take some of the parts off this carburetor and put them on that 2100 to remove the automatic choke and stuff and get the manual choke and stuff on there and that type of thing. So I'll show you what it takes to do that, and then we will move on from there. All right, guys, so we're going to do this a little different today. I'm going to just show you the unboxing of it and how I'm just kind of thinking out loud and pointing to stuff and playing with things, looking at the differences. But we're going to do this a little different. We're just going to jump right into the carburetor being finished. And then I'm going to show you everything I did and how I did it after the fact. So I think that's going to be easier to understand because it was really confusing. Even me doing it, watching the video was a little confusing. So I think this is going to be the better way of going. So let me know what you think. All right, so starting off on the choke side. So there is a tube that rides on the shaft there. It's basically just what it pivots around. We need to move that to the other side. The shafts are all offset slightly differently. So I just took a carbide bit and a Dremel tool and just ground where they swedged it on there or whatever off, stuck it through, and then I just weld it the other way, just some tack welds. It's just for it to ride on. It's not a super structural part. And I just tack welded it and then used the little Dremel tool again to smooth it out and open the hole back up. All right, and that's what it should look like when it's done. And now this little bracket that goes on the choke flap itself, you have to pry that off of the other carburetor, at least on mine. I'm not sure if that's how they are normally. They just put it on there and then just swedge the brass shaft around it so that it wouldn't fall off. So I just use a screwdriver to pry it off, and I didn't even have to grind it. It comes right off of there. Okay, and forewarning, and I didn't film this, but when you take that off, it is round, an oblong round piece, and I did have to open that up just a little bit with that Dremel tool. Okay, so there I had to add some spacers. I just used a 1/4 inch nut behind the bracket just so that the cable was pulling straight on that. And then the screws that I used were from the accelerator pump off the other carburetor. They were the right length. That's where I got them from, so you don't have to go shopping. There's the fuel lines after I got them replaced. They actually still had fuel in it. So about a year and a half ago when we were moving, we tried to get this thing running, and then it was the accelerator pump, or the accelerator pump wasn't working, and then also the float bowl valve wasn't working on it. So we just gave up, towed it over here. So that fuel was still in the lines there. So as for the vent on these carburetors, it's actually a valved vent, so it will only vent when you're pushing the gas pedal. So I just ran a line from the top there, which you didn't have on the old carburetor if you're doing what I did, and then around to the vent line on the bottom of the carburetor that just goes into the air cleaner. So that's what that random hose just making a loop there is doing. And then there was the vacuum line that went to the distributor. So pretty simple there. Now we'll move on to the linkage. It just goes where the the linkage barb is, or the ball there. I just pulled that out, and then I'm going to oversize drill it to 3/16, and then it just hooks up just like it's supposed to. Very soft metal. All right, and so now lastly, I need to hook up, I'm going to replace this contraption that I got going on there. So that's just basically a rubber line from there to the last hose clamp you see there. And then I put a T in it and a valve, and then I just ran it down with this hose. And what I used to do with this thing a long time ago was fill my lawnmower with it. I'd just flip that valve, and then I put this bolt in so bugs wouldn't crawl up it. And then it would gravity feed out, and it would, it was actually like a siphon because the line would be full. So as soon as you open that valve, it would just basically be siphoning out that line and into my lawnmower, and then I'd shut the valve and be on my way. So that was kind of my clever way of filling my lawnmower, and then keeping the gas fresh in this thing since I didn't drive it very often. I would just kind of use it as my mobile gas tank. I'm not going to do that anymore, so I don't need that there anymore, so we're just going to take all that out. So I'm just going to put a line from there to there. Okay, so I got the line off, and I hooked the other end of the longer line before I cut it down to length to the gas tank. But I am going to, since this one will siphon out, I'm gonna get it started just by using my brake bleeder to get the liquid in here, and then it should siphon out the rest of the way. It actually doesn't look too bad, the fuel. Doesn't smell bad either. And there's what we got. So, pretty simple. All right, and now moving on to changing the oil in our air filter. So kind of the predecessor to a K&N, I guess, but these are very cool air filters. They seem to work really well. Funny story with these is when Mount St. Helens erupted over on the west side of Washington State, all the ash, I guess, this is kind of before my time. I was alive when it happened, but I don't remember it. But all the ash blew to Spokane, and the only cars that could drive on the street were the old ones with oil bath air cleaners. All the other ones would clog up the air filters instantly. So, but where the oil bath ones were able to kind of dissolve the ash, so it wouldn't actually clog it up. So anyway, kind of funny story. The stud, the air cleaner stud, that did not work from the old carburetor to the new version. So I had to use a piece of, I think it was 1/4 inch or 5/16 all thread in there. So just keep that in mind if you're doing that. The studs don't interchange if you're doing the same thing I did. My bottom plate on mine was bent a little bit. So I had to kind of straighten it out to get it set back in there right. But got it down, and now we'll just change the oil on it, on the engine itself. That was what some would call stuck on there. All right, I vacuumed out the tray, and it's kind of bare metal, rust metal. So I'm just gonna spray some of this rust stuff on it. All right, so I just kind of went with soak it, and I vacuumed it out as good as I could, and then I just soaked it. It's pretty good. I mean, it's actually amazingly solid still. So with that rust performer stuff, you're lowering the pH at the same time. That's why it keeps it from continuing to rust. And that's all I was going for. So we'll let that dry for a minute, and then I'll throw the battery in there. Okay, rubber 13x7. Perfect. Now when we run a strap around this, it'll hold it nice. The battery I put in there is quite a bit oversized. The factory hardware for holding the battery down doesn't really work unless you buy like a re-popped old antique battery. All right, it's sitting on rubber, so it's cushioned pretty good. This thing is always a big hassle. Okay. All right, I'm going to do a trick to get the fuel down that line. I'm going to just increase the atmospheric pressure in the tank real quick. Don't pressurize it, but just increase the pressure. So seal it with your hand or a rag. That'll hopefully have gotten it to the fuel pump. See? All right, I'm gonna increase the throttle temporarily so that we can get this thing running. It's running pretty good even without the choke on. We got pressure and everything. I haven't checked the voltage yet. We'll get it running first. Let's try that. That should make it run. It almost wanted to go. wide open exhaust leak right there. The gasket just completely fell out. Look how much back pressure that creates having that crossover like that. So these gaskets are unbearable. I mean, it's a gap. You can see the gap like that. It's just the gasket's missing. So while it's hot, while it's been running, I've been spraying this plaster on it. Because I'm going to try to take this crossover pipe off and replace those gaskets. Let's see if these bolts will actually come loose. I don't have high hopes that they will, and I don't want to create a huge problem by taking them off. It is coming loose. That was the worst looking one. Yep. I don't know if I have gaskets for this. I'd rather bolt it together with nothing in there than leave it with half of a gasket. That was where it was coming out of there. Yeah, I would be better off without it at this point. If I don't happen to have some gaskets, and I have a nice one here to match up to. So the bolt holes are the same. The ID is a little bit larger, but I think it'll be all right. So we'll hold it on to here and see if that's going to get squished by this part, which it is. So I think we got two gaskets. So look at that. It needs to be a hoarder sometimes, especially if you can find it. And I seize the crap out of these threads. And I have different nuts, so here's the deal. These are 7/16 studs. So normally a 7/16 nut is 11/16. But the nuts that were on here were only 5/8. And I have a feeling we might have to reuse them because I think the 11/16 nuts may be a little too close to the tube itself. So we might not be able to get a socket on them, is what I was getting at. So I'm going to put washers on it this time before the lock washer so that the lock washer doesn't just end up down in the groove, which it did last time. It wasn't actually functional. Yeah, that's exactly the case. So we're gonna reuse the 5/8 ones. Right here in this hose. Okay, front fixed. Now we just add coolant. Alright, last little project, and then I'm done with this one for now. We're just going to change valve cover gaskets. They are, I don't know what happened to it on this side, but it's leaking like a sieve down on the bottom. I think it might have popped in or something. So I remember working on this thing before. I remember a lot of the gaskets don't have the tabs on these ones for some reason. Yeah, it did. So they didn't have the retaining tabs, so it popped in, so it leaked. I don't know when that happened, but I just so happen to have one, I think. Anyway, I'm pretty sure these are them. So when you put them in there, if you've ever done these before, bend the gasket down like that and it keeps it from popping out while you're putting it on. Once it's on, it doesn't make a difference. All right, well that should work. We're just do the other one just for good measure, since it appears not to have the tabs as well, and I happen to have a set, so I'm gonna just go ahead and use them. Okay, so one thing I did while you weren't filming is I ended up changing the gasket on the exhaust, on the output of the passenger side one as well. I ended up putting another one of those gaskets in, and that made it sound a lot better. That sounds a lot better. Hear the rockers now. Probably should have adjusted them while we had it open. But pretty good. Nice. All right, so For those of you, this truck I believe used to have the door cards. I really want to look up what those are supposed to look like because they haven't been there this whole time I've seen had the truck. But there's that zipper. Even has some antique jumper cables in there. It's kind of a cool little idea. It looks like you could have put one on the other side, but this one it didn't have it, and I don't know if it was an option to have that one or not. It's been used. I made that tailgate a long time ago. The factory tailgate I think it was made of tin foil. They're not very good. All right, here goes nothing. This clutch pedal is so easy to push that it literally feels like it's not even connected. But it appears to be I can put it in gear and I can start to go. So oh boy. I do not remember the shift pattern of this transfer case, so I am going to stop out here and make sure that I'm not in four-wheel drive. I'll probably have to unlock the hubs. I'm pretty sure the hubs were locked in, otherwise it would have drugged the tires when I was pulling down the hill. So I'm definitely in two-wheel drive. It was weird. I don't know if my front hubs are even working on it, to be perfectly honest. It feels good. I mean, it feels just like I remember it. It's not a powerhouse by any means, but it definitely can go. The turn signals worked. I checked all those. Even the dash lights work. Speedometer doesn't work, and I don't remember why. I don't think there's a cable in it or something. Go so bad. All right, well, here goes the hot start. See if it does it or not. Nope. So it was definitely empty. Fuel gauge works. So cool. It says 3/4 though, and it was pretty full when I just filled it. I filled it up. I didn't let it click off because I don't like running them up that high at these breathing necks, you know. So it may be 3/4, it may be full, but either way, at least it works. We have reference. was amazingly uneventful. I can't be happier with that.